Life is a lot like beekeeping. Beekeeping isn't easy, and at times can be downright tough. Sometimes you feel like you're on an island, that you're not making a difference, and that you're on your own. But just remember, the darkest hour is just before dawn. There are those out there shining a light, being the change, and being a lighthouse. You're not alone. There's an incredible community of folks who want to help, who want to lift you up, and want to see you do well. Like the honeybee is to the hive, we're better together. With hard work, if we work together, and with a little help from above, all things are possible. It's not just about keeping bees. It's about being our brother's keeper. Be the lighthouse.
Woohoo!
Well, hey guys.
What's up,
Howdy,
Greg?
howdy.
I feel like it's been a while since we had the whole gang back together in one place.
It sure
Yeah, I
has
know.
been. It's been, what, 4 weeks, right? Something like that.
Yeah,
Oh my
it's
gosh.
definitely been a little while.
Yeah,
How are you guys doing?
Doing great.
doing all right.
It's been fun.
I got to drive down and visit somebody the other day, so that was fun.
You know, I just caught the premiere of the Learning Yard on the Castle Hives channel.
Wow.
Thanks for doing
That
all.
was
I really
fun.
appreciate you stopping in and taking some video.
No, that was an awesome day. It was. I had a lot of fun. Yeah.
Man, I
a
wish I
lot of
was
fun.
close. Wish I was closer. I got
And-
We need
I
a friend
do-
with a helicopter or plane or something.
Well, I do wish I was closer, except for like in January. Then I'm glad I'm not closer.
Right.
It's
The
like-
ending of that all, it's like it all kind of came together at the end. And at the end, and there might be footage of this coming up here in the future. Somebody,
Oh,
somebody got plastered about right here
no.
as they did something. So, and yeah, that's all I'm going to say. But,
That's a tease. And if anyone has seen any of our videos, you guys know that my wife is very. She reminds me frequently that while you can't get any uglier, you definitely should think about wearing your veil, especially on camera. And I just I just can't get in a habit of doing that. So Brian and Dan were over at the learning yard here this past Saturday, and I thought, well, shoot, Brian's got his camera. With my track record right now of getting videos out, if Brian wants to shoot some video and get it out there, let's just do this, let's do that. There's all kind of fun stuff coming up, including making a three-way split with a package using cut cells from plastic foundation. A lot of these things people say don't do, can't be done, don't try it. And we have a little different experience here, I guess.
Yeah, Greg, we were talking earlier a little bit that there's so many things out there that you read the books and they say you can't do it, but you learn that you can. A lot of things. Of course, like you mentioned, if you have 1 or 2 hives, it's a little more risky, but
yeah,
as you build up a little bit, you can risk a few more things. And I've found over the years that several things that I used to think were just you could not do, you can definitely do it. So
the thing is that it's not. I think when people say you can't do it, I think it's they can't do it. The bees can do a lot more than we actually give them credit for. You know, I see Ian just jumped on here. I just want to say we're thinking about you, Ian. Sending thoughts and prayers your way. I hope your bee yard turns around and things get straightened up for it. It's heartbreaking watching you deal with all that. We're definitely thinking about you, buddy.
Yeah, my gosh, how wrenching is that to see all those hives just washed down that flash flood right there, and then him.
It seems like it's been one thing after another there for him, and that's hard for anyone to watch, you know, let alone actually deal with.
I mean, well, we were sitting. Who was it? You, Dan, and I were sitting down after everybody had left, and you said about those pictures, and it was just like, what do you even say looking at that? You know, everyone had left Saturday, and we were me and Dan and Brian were just sitting around the shop just talking, and my phone buzzed, and then I looked down and saw I saw Ian's update, and it was just, pardon my German, it was this expletive. Cannot believe this is going on. And then so I told Brian and Dan, and we were looking. I mean, you know, looking at that, it's tough, but I got a feeling it's these kind of things that make guys like Ian Stepler. This isn't his first rodeo. There's been failures on the farm, things that have happened. He's dug deep, and that's why he's so successful doing what he's doing, because he's learned how to work through. And there's actually probably maybe at some point after he has time to process all that, the whole idea of how to process this right now, how to keep moving forward. What do we learn from that? That there's a lot of really, I'm sure some huge lessons for a lot of folks in that too, you know.
It's interesting. I saw when, I think Jose, who's in the comments here, he's on here right now. The California beekeeper.
Hey, Jose.
He touched base with it when this happened to Ian as well, because he had some bees that got flooded back in the spring a little bit earlier. And
I remember seeing that.
He went through a similar thing. I didn't think he had near as many hives that happened to, but my goodness, that was rough to watch. Poor Jose out there trying to get those bees out of there at night, and it was cold and rainy and nasty. But I know those two can probably, you know, communicate, or they understand each other in the flood situation better than a lot of us would.
Yeah. That's a difficult situation, but yeah, like you said, Greg, I mean, I'm sure this isn't Ian's first rodeo, you know, and I'm sure that he'll power his way through it, and things will be fine at Stepler Farms, you know.
Yeah.
So
it definitely gives us grace for us when we think that, you know, whenever we're talking with the kids, you know, whether they're playing sports or they're doing this, you know, sometimes kids go through this, they go through this growth period where they're competitive, but then they're also constantly comparing themselves with somebody else. They're always, if their team didn't lose or their team lost, and it's the whole, you know, kind of aspect of that. But when you teach them that there's always a bigger bear in the woods, that it's not about being the best, it's being where you are right now, enjoying that, knowing that it might not go the way that you want it to go, but now what do we do moving forward from here? That's a lot of as a lot of us smaller beekeepers watch guys like Ian, you know, do what he does and persevere and push through. You know, not that we want him to have these kind of situations for our learning opportunity, but it doesn't go unnoticed, and that struggle is appreciated, and any wisdom that we can glean off of that, on how someone like Ian can move forward and push through that. That's some huge, valuable life lessons, I think, for all of us. And those are the kind of things that you want to be able to pass on to your kids and pass on to your friends, and just kind of keep digging in. But it's a lot to try to absorb all that at any scale. So I hope that turns around for him quick.
You know, what Russell said right there is so true too. Sometimes you may lose a battle, but you can still win the war.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Can you imagine if we, all the times, you know, and it's not to downplay the severity of what's going on up there in Ian's neck of the woods, but you know, how many times, even as a backyard beekeeper, 1 or 2 colonies where things just seem like they're absolutely dire. You know, it's all a matter of context. It's all a matter of perspective too. Can you remember when you had 1 or 2 hives and they were, you know, going downhill, they were dying out, they crashed, they swarmed, they absconded, where it seemed like it was the end of the world in that moment. But then after all these years later, you know, whether it's 1 hive or 1 yard or 1 whole season, you know, you start to, I guess that's all part of this journey too, though, isn't it? In some weird way.
Yeah,
sure is.
Yeah.
Well, how's everything going in your guys' neighborhoods? Bruce, you're probably 90 degrees, sunburnt, tired of all that sunshine and warmth, and just sick and tired of seeing them bees by now, aren't you?
Yeah.
Well, right now it's 83 degrees, and it was warmer today, I think. So I think we always said our high was 90 today, according to my phone, or it was going to be. So it was pretty warm.
Man,
it's pretty warm, and but yeah, it's good. It's all good. I just, you know, I think I'm tired of the bees until I go get in the bees, and then I just love it.
Right.
I mean, I just want to be in the bees more. Like it's a true addiction. I think. I guess there could be worse addictions for sure, but man, I'm just most at peace when I'm out there with the bees, unless I'm just have a whole bunch to do and I'm super tired and just, you know, lots of times I get in them and you know, I start off for a good part of the day, I feel pretty good, but by the end of the day, I'm ready to be done with them, and they're ready to be done with me too. So it's a mutual agreement. But right now we've got a good flow going. They're a lot nicer. They're just pretty happy, and I don't have to suit up like, you know, like I did as much as I did before. I'm looking forward to these queens I got from Jose and my buddy Josh Ray across the Florida line, and they're supposedly his are real gentle too, and that's mostly what I have in that one location is those 2 genetics. Nice. There's a few in there that aren't, but most of them are those genetics. So maybe I can even work some of those with a veil, or maybe nothing, but we'll see. I don't know. I'm gonna have to wear a veil probably anyway. But
the true test, Bruce, is can you go out there in a pair of shorts?
Yeah, you're just. I see you do that all the time. So I don't know if whenever I've done that, my bees usually don't seem to buzz my legs that much until I go out there in shorts, and then they get. I mean, they do, but they don't seem to be. Well, I'll backtrack. Lots of times they are after my legs some, but when they're nice, they don't seem to get, you know, my face or my legs or be to, you know, get after me until I try to go without a veil or try to go out there in shorts, and then I get lit up pretty good. So I just wear jeans and you know, usually or long pants, and just I usually put a veil on before I start, but then I increase it from there. If they're getting after me, then I'll put a jacket on, and then they still get after me, I'll put gloves on. But I usually start with a veil and then just increase it until I have everything I need.
Yeah. So Bruce, are you at your end of the spring flow? Is that where you find yourself?
We're right in the middle of it, I think.
Right in the middle, okay.
Getting a little bit towards the end of it. The privet is the first flow, and it is blooming now.
Okay.
But the flowers this weekend, we're kind of starting to turn a little brown. So it's probably got about maybe a week left, and then we'll be on to the next flow. And there's probably a week or 2, maybe 3 delay in there between the privet and the tallow. Down here in the South, it's also known as the popcorn trees, people call them. For those who may be on here from the South and are not sure what tallow is, but that's our biggest flow coming in. And so they're definitely, it's amazing how quick those bees can turn it on, and you start seeing white wax in those boxes. You know, I'm been worried about it all spring. I'm like, man, we're just a little behind. What's going on? Am I going to get any honey? And then I opened up some hives a few days ago, and it's like they were just packing it in. So they just, when it turns on, the bees turn on. It's amazing how that happens.
Bruce, do you see I'm not going to pretend that I know your whole entire story on how you got to this point, but looking back from the time that I've known you, you had these hives that you were building up so they could maybe go out to California, then come back. Did you start those hives at the beginning of last year, or was that a progression throughout the year? I'm curious if you saw a difference, or a not a difference, have you seen a big advantage this year on the honey crop, on having those bees that have come from California and were hot and heavy and juicy and ready to go?
Just to be honest, not really. I pulled splits off of almost all of them, and pretty strong splits. Most of them were, some of them weren't, but I think those splits are going to make me more honey than the pollination bees. Honestly, really? The queens are they're at least a year old, most of them, and they're just kind of tired. Now, I haven't been through those pollination hives, the original donor, parent colonies in probably a week and a half, 2 weeks. So I don't know, I haven't really been in them since the flow got hot and heavy, but the location where they're at too I've never had bees there before. And I'm getting the idea that it's not a great area. Now, it's on the back of the land where I grew up. It's more on my uncle's land back there, but it's probably a good half mile to 3/4 of a mile on the other side of the woods from my other bees. And so I don't know, there's a lot of for it. We'll find out. We'll see. But I just haven't really been through them. We'll see how they do. But I don't know that it's a huge advantage coming in. I think if you just don't split them and if you can keep them from swarming, maybe it is. But, I basically doubled my number. I got 44 splits out of 48 colonies. And so it was pretty impressive. And I'm looking forward to seeing how it goes. But a lot of those colonies I started last year with my splits, I think, about this time in the spring of last year. And they have young queens in them. And I'm telling you, I think young queens is key. It's such an advantage, I think, to have a young queen. Now, it doesn't have to be like a brand new queen, but tops 2 years. I know some people try to, and what I found happens when I do that, that's what I've historically done, is just let them go until they fizzle out. They fizzle out, and they can fizzle out fast. And so I think the way that I can justify, or the way I'm trying to decrease the age of my queens while not having to go through and just keep track of when every queen was, started, when they have started, is I just I did a lot of splits. And so in all those splits, pretty much you're going to have a new queen. And then a lot of my bees, I think, have superseded. And I think I've got some really nice young queens coming on right now. So we'll see how it works out with the ones I purchased and with some of the ones that I did with my splits and some of the cells I put in there.
Yeah. Well, that's cool. Tonight, we'll get an update from Brian here too. But I think you nailed several of the points that a lot of folks are thinking about. A lot of folks right now, depending on what part of the country in, you're either A, worried or planning for swarms. You're either planning your splits, and also you've already started rearing queens. I think even as far north, probably about maybe up in the middle part of Michigan, they probably just started to. And then, of course, the cooler you go, unless you find other ways to do it, it gets a little tricky to do that. But that's kind of where most of the country is now, is figuring out swarms, figuring out splits, trying to raise them out some queens, kind of grow their bee yard out. So I thought that'd be a great few topics to kind of tonight, to take some questions, to kind of have this conversation focused maybe in those areas there. Brian, in regards to swarms and splits and queens, what are you seeing in your neck of the woods?
Well, the last, week? Well, no, 2 weeks. It'll be 2 weeks Friday. I had my largest colony swarmed on me. And prior to that, I hadn't even, don't think I saw even a cell in it, just a couple little practice cups. But then we had bad weather and all that. And then we, like Ohio does, we warmed up.
Yeah.
So I had that one swarmed and I caught it. The other two, it was in a, let's see here, 4-day stretch. Last Friday, I saw capped cells. So did a split off of that one. And then on Monday, I knew that I had to go back just from my inspections on Friday. I knew I had to go back to the other colony on either Monday or Tuesday. And I went back on Monday and saw capped cells in the other colony. So split that one. found the queen, but for both splits. So hopefully those queens will stay put. And I think they have so far. I mean, I checked afterwards, and yesterday I went and just a peek in the one, and queen was in there walking around doing her thing. So, but yeah, it's getting busy up here. So, and that's
Right.
good. I mean, I went from 3 to I've got 7 right now.
Hey Brian, so tell us your method of splitting is catching swarms and just kind of, do you crowd the bees to see the cells? What's your philosophy? Because I know you've mentioned so many times, I think I'm going to see cells. Are you trying to kind of crowd the bees so they will intentionally make cells, or what is your philosophy on doing
No,
the split?
I just more or less let them do their thing in the spring. And up until now, like, it's hit or miss really up in this area just because of the weather. Like today, I think we're like right now I think 50, like 1 degrees, 51. So it's just the weather.
Holy.
So it fluctuates so much that really when I have those opportunities and I can get in there and do a good inspection and see how those frames look. And that was my whole purpose like 2-3 weeks ago when I started looking for the cups, just because I wanted to see what they were doing. Are they starting to practice yet? And then when I saw them charge them, I saw eggs, and I saw them start to build them out. My whole, like, the method that I try this year so far has worked out best, is when I see those capped, then I'll just grab my queen with, I think for the split that I did on Monday, I took 4 frames of brood, shook some other bees in with her, and just moved her off to a different box. So, and I'll let that other colony, build out. What was there? 3 or 4 capped cells, and then there was a couple others. So, I'll let them make another queen. That colony, I'm hoping that it's successful, just because that colony, and it's the bee castle one that I'm talking about, they're so gentle. You open it up, and I've told Greg they're the Appalachian stoner mutts, because they just sit there and, like, I'll pop the top and the inner cover comes right with it, and they're just kind of like, and I could swear I hear them look up and they're like, hey man. So I'm hoping that I get some daughters off of that queen, just because it's such a great colony. But that's how I typically will do it, is just move that queen, let those cells go, and go from there. So
Sounds good.
There's always lots of different ways to do that. Sometimes the bees teach us one way or the other, and it's still a learning opportunity. There's lots of different ways to kind of figure that out. I want to thank Bruce. Thank you, sir, for the super chat. Really do appreciate that. Bob Walker, thank you. And Lee, thank you guys for those super chats. Make sure you folks go over, as a way to say thanks for them supporting our show. Make sure you go over and check out their live chats. I'm over on the Walker Bee Ranch, Kodiak Farm. Check out their channels too. Show them some love. We all appreciate it. And there's, like you guys hear us always say, because it's something that we've learned from Bob, and a lot of us have practiced in our business and in life in general, that there's plenty of room at the table for everybody. And so it doesn't matter how many folks are doing live chats or interviews or Q&As. There is always room at the table for everybody. And I think that we would all do well, I think, to keep that in mind, and also to spend the time working with each other, rather than try and find all the little things that make us different, and latching on to these little, he said this, and there's so much to learn from each other. And it's, when you keep it positive, when we support somebody, I'd rather go to bed knowing I supported somebody than I did something to kind of kick the leg out of their stool. But Brian, thank you, sir, for the super chat. That was very nice. That's I know we've said it before, and it really does make a difference. A lot of the folks know how much time that these things take. But more importantly, outside of just the time that it takes to do that, super chats, supporting, us in our businesses, these things not only help us keep the businesses moving and the lights on, but it lets us, it gives us the opportunity, it gives us the time to be a lighthouse to others. And that's a big deal. That really is. It's when you are supporting the shows, when you're supporting folks' live chats and giving that encouragement, you're not only are you encouraging them, but you're helping them also be a lighthouse to somebody else. And I think that's a big, it's important. It's a big deal.
Yeah.
But we had some questions. There's a lot. So I'm probably in a similar boat with Brian as all of our overwintered colonies are really starting to boom. We have seen some. Maybe we could talk about that for a second. We've seen some differences in genetic stock and kind of what they do in the wintertime. And we've seen this in a couple different yards too. Is we've noticed that our long line Carniolan Italian hillbilly mutt bees, they kind of have more brood going into the wintertime, and that can be problematic one way or the other. But what we notice is they're actually just absolute boomers coming out of the spring. I mean, they were just going hot and heavy, and were the first ones to put on drones and just get us into a good spot as far as having drone saturation and brood and things to kind of work with. And then what's interesting and was really cool to see it, a lot of folks listening, they've probably heard some of that, maybe through discussions, threads, or folks who run these type of bees say this before. But we're also running some New World Carney Caucasian hybrids, and they are just a completely different animal altogether. They're beautiful stock. This is stock that we've got from Bob, from his singles, from his Kobe stock, and they're more thrifty. They were going into the winter with smaller numbers. They actually did better overwintering in smaller clusters, but they took a little bit longer to come out of the spring. They're just now starting to catch on, but it was almost like just all of a sudden, boom! Now they're exploding. The boxes are busting, and we're slapping doubles on where they were going into singles. The doubles now are getting ready to have a third box. They're just it kind of blew my mind how fast they built up. And it was just like, as soon as we got a couple warm days, they just went nuts. Absolutely crazy. Russell Koopman, thank you, sir, for the super sticker. I really do appreciate that.
Number one fan.
Number one fan.
Yeah, I see it.
I think I've got some settings on. We're having some. We had some really bad storms come through. Green skies, hail the size of golf balls. I tried to take a little bit of video. I was running out to the bee yard to put full buckets of feed on top of these pallets. The pallets I've been in and out of, so the lids are just dry. They're loose. They could blow off. And so I was running out there to put gallon buckets on everything. That extra 11.5 pounds or so of feed would keep the lid down, and I'm just pushing it. I finally get out there to the farthest set of pallets where I've got some really special queens in there, and it's just I'm in the tractor, and all I can hear is just, it's not like I'm getting just blasted with rocks. The cab is. I like a dummy. I run out there really quick to go throw those buckets on those colonies. Boy, I got whomped in the back of the head with some hail that was just, it was big. It wasn't the smartest thing I ever did. But all the bees made it through. I was really, there was a video we posted to our farm page there at Nature's Image Farm, green skies, and there was this little funnel that was flirting. It was like just going this and then on that. I'm like, oh boy, here it comes. But that's just one of those things where it's that time of year, so I guess we'll just have to do what we can, make sure we keep the lid secured. Now that the colonies are building up, it's not really a big deal, because these Caucasians, they really propolize heavily, it seems, and they glue these lids down pretty good. But anyways, it's fun to see the difference when you take a Carney Italian hybrid, and then you take a Caucasian New World Carney. You can really see differences, and so like how we plan what we do about that is kind of fun. And I'm really looking forward to seeing when we take those two lines. We've got our old line of they've survived us. They're Carney Italian. Who knows what else? We had some feral. It doesn't matter. They're like you said, our Ohio Appalachian hillbilly hippie stoner bee. They're just mellow. They just do their job.
The hippie stoners.
To blend those with these New World Carney Caucasian genetics,
yeah,
is going to be pretty cool to see kind of what comes from that. But anyways, it's fun. Just little things we can geek out as far as genetics and types and all that. But that's kind of where we're at right now. Is we don't really have aren't worrying about swarms at all here, because everything has really been split out, and we got ahead of that before it was a problem. Yeah. But as Brian was talking about earlier, Brian was out and we were taking some videos on doing a 3-way package split with some cut cells off of plastic. And you guys, you'll have to watch that video when it comes out, and you'll see why my wife says to wear a veil. Bruce, what are you looking at as far as swarms go in your neck of the woods right now? Are you past those early spring swarms?
I think for the most part we are. There's still a few going on. It was really kind of interesting. The swarms were real early this year, although everything else seemed to be a little late, at least in my opinion. But I think there's still a few going on out there, but most of the swarming, I think, is slowing down here. So I haven't, I haven't gotten a lot of calls lately, but I don't really want a lot of calls. I don't really have time to go get them. So I haven't really advertised it that much.
They're exciting, but I think one of the things that I think about a lot when it comes to swarms is it's fun. There's a certain energy and a power when you're in the middle of just thousands and thousands of bees flying around you, and you're just you're feeling the heat. You're feeling the fanning off their wings. You can smell them. They smell so awesome in the air on a warm day. And then if you get one of those bright days where it's just all you see is the shimmer off their wings and they're flying all the way around you, and you just it's nothing short of magical. But I often wonder, if that is what we're doing to grow our bee yard and it's free bees and you have the time, I guess that's one thing. But I wonder how much further. I know personally I would have been a lot further along if I would have spent the same amount of time running around town catching swarms. If I would have spent that time actually managing the beast in the bee yard, I wonder how much further I would have been chasing some of the swarms. There's a lot to swarms, and I think we understand some of the things about swarms, but there's an awful lot about swarms that I think are wild cards, and a lot of folks will see all kind of weird things with swarms, good and bad. But speaking of swarms, who's one of the experts at not only swarms, but is arguably one of the he's real big in Europe, but he is one of those just cutout kings that just everybody knows about. This guy just slaps a video together and it gets millions of views. Millions. It's crazy. Maybe we should get this guy on and talk about swarms for a couple minutes. What do you guys think?
Millions.
I like it. Let's do it.
Yeah.
Introducing the one, the only, Yappy Beeman. Yay! Everyone's cheering for you.
Uh-oh, look at this. He's muted. You think he's done this before?
Hello. I know it's your first time. There you go.
I heard him.
Oh.
Long-time listener, first-time caller. Yappy Beeman, welcome to the show.
Bump. These are my eagle eye glasses. I got this idea from Shawi. As long as I'm wearing my eagle eye glasses, you can't get nothing past me as far as queens go.
Nothing?
No.
I like it.
Yeah, but you know an awful lot about swarms. I think, matter of fact, it could be an entire show in the future. Maybe I can talk you into doing an entire show on all the things that we think we know about swarms might not necessarily be a fact.
I probably could do that because I have tended for the last 9-10 years I've been doing this, and I can tell you that the old joke, and if you're a new beekeeper, you've may have heard this. Older beekeepers, y'all have. The two things that I've never known is to never see a screen bottom in a tree where bees normally live, and bees don't read books very well. I've never read a book that a bee has written. So everything that you kind of pick up on and you see in a book, great baseline stuff. But if you ever tend to actually pay attention to the bees, they're going to teach you that they really don't go by the books. So there's a lot of different things. I really enjoy you guys. I love enjoying being on here. I love listening to your channel.
I hope there's a butt monkey coming.
And but I actually, for those of you that don't know this little secret side of it, a few weeks ago, y'all were in here talking, and you had one of the guests on, and there were some different conversations that were going on, and I kind of got to thinking, I don't kind of really totally agree with the thought process. Not that the process was wrong by any means, but it was not as in depth as what I felt that knowledge-wise, in the way that people look at their bees, their actions, and different things to understand your bees. Some of that information really was kind of maybe not as deep as what it should have been, or maybe not as factual as what it could be. So Greg and I have been talking about it a little bit, and now you just decided to throw me under the bus and get us together sometime.
It's only me, you, Bruce, and Brian. No one else would ever know that we just committed to doing an entire show on swarms.
Okay. Well, let me drop this bomb on you. I'm not going down this road, but I'm gonna,
not yet.
By a show of hands in the audience, the topic of treatment-free beekeeping is very strong.
Oh,
what did you just say the TF word?
Oh, I did. It. I capital TF it.
We're gonna all be shadow banned.
Okay, but no, that's why I'm saying we're not going down that road. That way you can't get mad at me or the guys hosting.
We actually should go down this road and have a very respectful, intelligent conversation with a variety of folks. Different show. Sorry, go ahead, Yappy.
Oh yeah, I mean it would be great. But the concept of treatment-free beekeeping is something that is very widely talked about. Well, if we go down the road of saying that we are now looking for genetics to do certain things in regards to we want mite-resistant bees. That's the point for the majority of our treatment-free stuff. Well, I kind of had this little thought process going, and a few days ago in the Alabama beekeeping group, there was a discussion going on about dealing with your swarms. And there was some back and forth going on, and somebody dropped a bomb that they're actually genetic testing or trying to genetically alter for certain traits. I don't know if altering would be, but they're hunting for a certain trait to try to breed a bee that is less swarmy. Now I have not found it. So here's your homework for everybody that's down there in the chat to start looking up a study that was done on how to create a bee that is less swarmy.
Cut her wings off.
Well, no, that's just for your queen. We're talking about the whole colony.
Sorry, I can't do a quick answer for you.
Yeah, cut all their wings off. All right, and bottle feed them.
Just put them into a cage. They'll be fine.
But the mere concept that they can create bees that in their mind are less swarmy, you would have to completely alter the entire thought process and the genetic, the whole purpose and the process of what bees do and why they do it. I mean, if we're talking about swarms, let me ask you this. Why, in the most basic concept, why do bees swarm?
Reproduction.
Okay. So if we look at the early springtime, Brian, you nailed it. It's a reproduction. That's the way that type insect, that particular insect, gives birth to a whole completely another it. All right. So they've made it through the winter. They've done great. They've got all the supply, and they decide, hey, it's time for us to do this. Their internal, in their nature, says it is time for us to break in half, and half of us go live somewhere else, give birth to another colony. But is swarming different in Bruce, in our area, in the end of May? What do we call our swarms when they swarm in May?
I call them secondary swarms or cast swarms.
How about
primary
overcrowding swarms?
Well, overcrowding. I think that can be year round though. That can be early too. If it can be early, I would say.
And I can't say that it is or not, but in our early spring window, if the bees have actually overwintered well and they have they start kicking in the pollen comes in. See, we're blessed in our area, Bruce and I, to have very mild winters. I mean, they're not perfect, but I mean, shoot, I was out catching swarms one day, and Brian's up in Ohio or wherever you're at, and it's snowing. Okay, which 2 days before that he was in shorts, but like 2 days later, all of a sudden it's he's getting snow and I'm catching swarms. So we are blessed with having better conditions for our bees than what they are further up north. But I've chose to break it down in the basics to where early spring, late winter. I don't know that we can say that there's enough stores that are coming in, enough nectar, enough pollen that's coming in to create a overcrowding situation. I think that it kicks them in and that queen starts just going gangbusters with making her numbers up. All right. Well, without the numbers, they can't swarm. It don't matter if they've got 100 gallons of honey sitting there. If they only got 3 pounds of bees, it really, kind of defeats that purpose, because I think that bees are pretty darn smart in regards to a lot of things. But the stronger overwintered colonies will then separate or split, early spring swarm, do their thing, reproductive swarm. And it was explained to me years ago that now when we get into where the flow of nectar is so strong, Bruce and I are in that right now. He's towards, he's talking about being towards the end of his privet flow. Well, he's kind of closer to Montgomery. Bruce is about 2.5 hours south of me. I was in Birmingham yesterday, and the air smells like a hint of...
It smells like a big flower, yeah.
Yeah, it smells like a hint of helium.
I'm actually more like probably 3 or 4 hours south. Yeah. The privet. If you went very, very flowery, I think. I mean, you can smell it. You walk outside your house and you can smell it everywhere.
That's some really sweet honey. It seems like, isn't it?
Wow.
Oh yeah.
It's got a kick.
Yeah, but Birmingham is full fledged right now as far as the privet flow. Well, I'm actually coming out towards the end of my blackberry flow. All right. And I'm starting to notice a lot of areas around me are starting to pop privet flowers. So privet, I'm in my location within the 2 or 3 miles around me, I'm probably 2 weeks out as far as I'm about 2 weeks out as far as my privet really starting to kick. So knowing what all I've got going on, I'm prepared right now to say, okay, I got to make sure my bees have got boxes on them. They've got the space, the different things. And I've got to be checking my bees to make sure that, they haven't got too much off the blackberry, because I got 37 acres literally on the other side of that picture right there, 37 acres behind me. That is nothing but blackberry.
Oh man.
That's a lot of blackberries, man. You got a lot of blackberry cobbler?
You know what? I hate getting out there and getting the stickers. So
you got to pick them first. That's usually the problem.
But I mean, that's literally just right across the street from me. So, I've got the waterfall, but then as soon as that dries up here within the next probably week and a half, because the temps are really kicking in, privet's going to start up, and that's for me in my yard. It is an equal, if not even greater amount of flow for me, just having, out where I'm at out in the country. So when we talk about saying what I said earlier, as far as overcrowding, I don't mean overcrowding as far as the bee numbers. I mean, as far as space for bees to do work.
Yeah.
Okay. So, for, the big red flag, people that are new in this, they always go, when should I do this? When should I do that? How can I tell if bees are going to swarm? Well, one major, if you don't even know what's flowing in your area right now, if you have no clue as to what's going on because you're new and you're just learning this, when you pull out those center frames of a 10 frame deep and you start seeing that they're putting clear liquid in where they should be putting in eggs, that is your sign. That's your giant red flag to say your bees are fixing it. If you don't do anything now, and bees are they're about to start swarming, and you're going to be all over it.
It's amazing what we can learn if we just look inside the box and see, understand. Not in a, and I'm not saying it in a snarky way, but if we learn to actually look, like Tim Huffman just said, read the frames. I mean, it tells us, once we understand what the bees do, and we've all heard it said that bees do two things, which is multiply and store honey. When you learn those little individual aspects of it and learn to read the box, read the frame, hey, if the idea is to keep the colony growing and keep numbers moving forward and forward and forward, give them opportunities to lay and not be plugged out down below. We're in a different situation up north, because you guys have this thing where you guys can get plugged out real quick. And it seems like for here, Brian, about the only time I think that I've ever seen us really get plugged out is maybe early fall if goldenrod comes on really heavy. But for us up here, it would be, I would love to have that problem, but we don't really see swarms because of that. There might be later in the year, they might slow down and might have some trouble here in Ohio with that. But for the most part, all of our swarming is, like you mentioned earlier, reproductive swarms. Interestingly enough, though, and I'm looking forward to a whole show with Yappy, going down some of these rabbit holes, because a lot of the things that Yappy sees or any of us sees is absolutely contrary to everything that we've learned, everything that we've read in a book, everything that we've seen or folks say, even at bee clubs. And I think that's the important thing, is not to, right there it is, the Contrary Beekeeper Show. Yeah. It's not intentionally we're trying to find the variance or the variable, but if we're just learn to read the situation, read the bees, then we can kind of see what's going on. One of these little teases, and I'll see what you think about it, Yappy. Maybe we'll have a much longer conversation on it.
I know.
Is there are some folks that I absolutely love to death here in Ohio. They're in about the northern part, and they worked so hard to grow their bee yard. They were really going to grow this apiary, and they spent all the time catching swarms, which I think if that's what you want to do, more power to you. Well, they caught all these swarms, and they were very early swarms. Like, they were freaking out. Oh my gosh, I can't believe there's all these swarms, but we're going to go catch them. Now, it wasn't their bees. It was all in this one kind of general area, and they were just catching swarm after swarm after swarm after swarm in the northern part of Ohio, even before we were even looking like swarms in East Central Ohio. And so they got them, and those bees did great. They boomed, they exploded, they went through the winter. They came out of the winter, and they did this weird thing where they had made, I think, 42 splits off of maybe 14 colonies, so pretty doable in Ohio, and they overwintered great. I think 90% of them came out of the wintertime. These bees did something pretty interesting. Just as early, almost like clockwork, as they got those bees, and when they got these swarms, they were saying how huge they were, like magnanimous, giant-sized swarms, bigger than any swarms that they've ever seen, every single one of these. Well, they caught them, split them out, grew them, overwintered, and guess what happened very early spring again before anything else? Every single one of those colonies, 30-some colonies, they didn't swarm, they absconded. Every single one of them.
Wow.
Oh, wow. That's interesting.
It raises the question of, what do we actually know about these bees? And is there some kind of genetic marker where these bees, we think that they're only leaving a box because they're swarming because of whatever reason we think. Can they also abscond for reasons that are outside of pest pressures and in local environs? Is it possible that that bees can genetically just be really, really flighty and it can abscond? It's something interesting to think about.
Deep thought process. I've never fully looked into Africanized genetic bees. But one trait with Africanized bees is they are very swarmy, is my understanding.
Right.
They follow flows. So I would want to be getting back deeper into, where did these bees come from? Now, North Ohio, I mean, Africanized genetics are Africanized genetics. They can be worked very easily. Were these bees a little bit more temperamental than not? But, an Africanized bee will follow flow. where the areas where they're at, they follow the constant flow. There's always something, and if that area doesn't have it, they're going to pack up and move somewhere else. Basic. I'm not getting in all scientific in depth, but that's how
a good point. They're literally just following fresh flow, just like a migratory bird. They're just boom, boom, boom. Yeah, interesting. Yeah,
and I'm not saying that those bees were, that was the case up there, but I've never experienced that, so I've never had. I mean, you just told a story on something that I'm going to have to sit here and I'm going to have to ponder that for a while. What would make every single hive all of a sudden out of nowhere abscond as far as that? That's
interesting.
They were managing them. So did they keep heavy feed on them all winter long, which kept them happy? Yeah, I mean, I don't know. There's so many questions that I would start coming. So many questions that I would start coming up with in wanting to know more. So because it's things like that got me my thought process as to where it's at now. I see something happen. And I take note of it. But if I see it happen 2 or 3 times, but it's just something that's not normal, I want to know why.
Yeah.
But I get people that'll, asking me questions all the time about, in regards to bee removal stuff. There's just so many things. But the teaser that I kind of threw it when I started out my conversation with Greg was, and I'm going to put it out there in y'all's brains. I can't see the chat, so y'all just gonna have to forgive me. I mean, you probably go ahead and talk dirty about me.
You wouldn't believe what they're saying about you right now. Yeah,
it's okay. I know Don. I know
coming out of there.
Yeah, I know Don. Don can't type fast enough. I'm sure.
He's not too far from you. Yeah, he's pretty close.
Well, that's it. I'm moving. I'm headed your way, Bruce. Don. No, Don would be a hoot to have
he's
lunch
from
with
Leeds,
sometime.
home of Charles Barkley, I think, in Leeds, right?
Really?
Right, Don? I believe so.
All right, so he's actually between us. So
yep. He's east of Birmingham.
But here's the thing. This is what literally started this chat between Greg and I, and that is, who controls in a beehive? Who actually controls the beehive? What actually controls the beehive? Who? What?
And can that change?
It's not who most people think.
It's the workers.
Mm-hmm.
That's my opinion.
I mean, it is. They just kind of create the...
Well, they dictate.
Well, they're the ones that are going out and foraging and seeing what's out there, seeing what the needs are. They can sense everything. The queen just is an egg laying machine, I think, mostly.
If she's failing, what do they do?
They'll
murder her. They murder her.
They replace her.
Yeah.
Okay.
If they're going to swarm, what do? They stop feeding her as much and they thin her up to prep for it.
Right.
She doesn't say, no, I don't want, no. You're giving me too much. I next week I need to fly. So I can't have that right now.
Now I'm going to play devil's advocate on you, Brian. All right. That's the theory, but we don't know. Maybe she doesn't need or accept food as readily. We don't know. But in the overall thought process, I very much agree. It is theorized that they slow her down on feeding her, thin her down. It has been also told to me, do you think that queen actually volunteers to leave that hive? Do you think that, she's like, man, y'all ain't feed me. I'm headed to Taco Bell. Let's, with a pit stop at the old Dunkin' Donuts, maybe get to see Brian. But
oh boy,
he would bring up donuts, wouldn't he?
I have to. All right, I have to. But here, people go to school for 4 years at some big college to learn about a bug, to get a piece of paper so they can spend the rest of their life literally learning about that bug, proving about that bug, going from in my common basic thought process, I guess my bucket list thing in beekeeping, I would love to sit and have one afternoon with Jamie Ellis just to pick his brain about what he scientifically knows about bees versus what my full experience about bees is, and say, well, what about this? What about this?
That would be a great conversation because you both are going to come at it from completely different aspects. And I tell you, I got to sit down and talk with Jamie, with Bob when we were shooting that video. And what I like about Jamie is he can have the scientific conversation. He leaves a little room for you to kind of get in there and jump and, you know, the what ifs and go down a different route. But I think it would be fun to have somebody who's on the institution school side versus what the guy under the house cutting the bees out, who is absolutely sweating and bleeding and having bees crawl up I think those are two really important. That's really important to get the field aspect, I think, in there too.
Yeah. Well, what have we been told about, I mean, as if they gave it to you when you guys were kids, but the overall, when we first got into beekeeping, what was the common theory or saying about when there's a main swarm? The original queen and half those bees and half as much food as they can carry, they take off and leave, right?
Yeah.
Leaving behind multiple queen cells.
Yeah.
Okay. So let me ask you this. Brian, what is it in theory that is supposed to happen after these queens start hatching? What's the general process that we've been told happens in a beehive?
What I've always heard and been told is once those cells emerge out, you know, you've got the battle royale that takes place, and then the whatever you want to say, the Hulk Hogan, the winner, you know, will then go out and mate and come back, and then you have your happy WWF.
Right. So let me ask you this. How is it that I have caught more swarms than I can even count that had multiple queens in them that were not mated?
Yeah, virgins.
How is it? Now, I could tell you a real great theory. I can't prove it from a Jamie Ellis standpoint, but how is it that I can catch a swarm and find 3-4 queens? How is JP and shall we caught 8 and 9 virgin queens in a swarm at one time and caged them and said, here they all are?
What's the likelihood of, because we raise queens here, we see all kind of goofy stuff at once. We'll see different queens will go in different boxes. And what's the likelihood of there being, you know, anyone who has forced a colony, crowded them out intentionally to get them to grow cells, has an intimate understanding of what they can actually get by with. A lot of folks in a lot of the books and a lot of the education will say that as soon as the bees start to draw a queen cell, they've made up their mind, they're going to swarm. And that is absolutely contrary to 99.9% of every situation that I've ever seen. And in fact, have actually used that mechanism to make queens and to make splits and let bees do all the work for a very long time. And it was awesome. And in doing so, you know what you can get by with. Sometimes you'll see that the bees will be a half a day or even a day earlier on hatching or late, depending on weather and nutrition, things like that. But it's not uncommon to sit there and watch 3 and 4 or 5 virgins all emerge at the same time or within 30 seconds and be running around the colony until they figure it. It's not just as soon as they that mechanism, there's no light switch, then all of a sudden they all are getting out and trying to kill each other. So I think there's that aspect. We've all seen colonies that have multiple queens for different reasons. But what's interesting to think about too, most folks, if you actually count, and if you do that thing where you shake the swarm onto a sheet and you watch, you will almost very rarely, I think, and Yappy, correct me if I'm wrong, it's very rare to only find one queen. You're usually finding at least 2 if you're actually looking most of the time. And like you guys have seen, there's sometimes 6 or 8 queens in that swarm. I don't wonder sometimes if it's a timing thing, and we're getting multiple maybe virgins out on a flight. Is it possible they're all collecting and all coming back to the same place, or you have a clump here and a clump there where maybe they'll get shot from one box, or
now here's
it's all from one box, or is it multiple?
Now here's the basics. I actually did a video on this a couple years ago, and let's go back a step. Think inside the box. Write that down, Greg, because that'll be the title for that video we're doing. Thinking inside the box.
Think inside the box. Okay.
Okay.
All right.
All right.
It takes me 2 months to do videos out. So someone's probably gonna take that name first.
That's all right.
Good thing it's just me, you, Bruce, and Brian watching.
Oh yeah.
Just us.
Ain't nobody. Yeah. Ain't nobody. Yeah. This is like, guys talk around the water heater.
It could be used more than once, so that's actually pretty cool. I like that. Think inside the box.
So
cool.
Our primary swarm and bees have left. Okay. What is the one thing during the battle royale, as Brian put it? How do those queens find each other so that they can battle royale it out?
Piping.
So somebody tell me why they do that. Why is there a need to do that?
That's a great question, because you automatically want to think, well, they are just willing to fall on the sword for the greater good. But I don't know that that's the case.
Well,
it's Marco Polo, isn't it? There's no pheromone. They can't smell each other, so they have to hear each other, find each other. What do you think?
Let's take a vote. Bruce, what do you think? Yay or nay?
I've recently heard that new virgin queens don't have a lot of pheromone, which I didn't really know that before. So that's something I've just recently learned.
Well,
I've heard. Now I don't know. That's what I've heard.
Yeah.
So that could very well be. I've never really understood all that, why they pipe and why they do all that.
Come on, Brian, you're the wild card.
Yeah.
I've always seen and heard that they will pipe so that they locate each other so that they can fight. So it was that, they make that piping sound as a location.
So here's an interesting thing too, though, is that when I've gotten mated queens in the mail, many times they pipe. They pipe like crazy. They're all in there just piping and piping and piping. You can hear them. It's pretty cool.
That's
so
actually
it's not
a wild
just
card.
virgin queens. Not just
and I've seen that too on very well fat, very voluptuous queens. When you put them in your cage and you put them all in the battery box, of course they buzz, and the JZB's cage is a little bit different than they do a Denton 3-hole. But if you listen, you will hear them pipe a little bit.
Well, I've had them just singing to each other, like literally just singing.
And I would liken that to being the age, because
they can't smell each other because they're still in cages, and it's not quite the same deal as being in an open ventilated colony.
Yeah, I mean, if you put them all in a box like that, and they're being in,
it's going to be a mashup, probably, of smells too.
I think that would be an age thing, because they're still in their teenage years, to have that thought process of, oh yeah, I hear you over there, I'm coming for you.
Yeah.
But I have always believed that the piping thing was nature's way for them to find each other. But it's still, even at that, I could really go down a rabbit hole with saying, well, if they do that, how is it that they can make it out of a colony during a swarming situation of a cast swarm or after swarm, secondary swarm, whatever you want to call it, and you can still have a handful, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8 of them that actually make it out, and they're all in that giant swarm together, hanging in a ball in a tree.
Who called it piping? Where did that even come from?
I don't know.
There's a couple different names: piping, pipping, squipping, squawking. There's all kinds of little different names for the different type of call and response and sound that they make. I've seen that too, because you can hear them. There's tooting. There's all different kind of sounds that sometimes you have to try to figure out which one you're hearing. It is the coolest thing in the world to hear that.
They sound almost like a chicken. They sound almost like a chicken.
Yeah. It's really cool. JP the Beeman did one back a few years ago. He was literally up in an attic, and where the roof line come down, and he's laying on the joist up top, or the trusses, and he's getting over to the corner of this where it all meets, and he could hear them meep, meep, meep going on with each other, and he recorded a little bit of it. It was pretty cool. But hang on, got to.
Three Boys B says, sometimes mine pipe when I accidentally squish them a little. Is that like when if you've ever butchered your own chickens and you're doing all the things that need done, and then you put them in the dip tank, the pink bath? Sometimes if your helper didn't get the esophagus out, you'll hear them go all the way down, and it'll freak a kid out if they're sitting there watching. That's their first time.
Well, So I came up with this thought process. Picture you got a 10 frame box packed full of bees, right? Well, hang on. A queen's queen in 24 hours. She moves the pheromones to other parts of her body by herself grooming and worker grooming. Virgin queens produce significantly less pheromones. I see. I agree with that. Less pheromones. Well, if we go under the theory that queen, we're all in agreement, has majorly lower levels of a pheromone, then could you kind of accept the theory that if we have a 10 frame deep, and if I was standing to one side of it, frame in front of me is number 1, the one farthest from me is number 10. So now you got a roadmap. On frame number 3, we have a couple of these little queens that hatch out. On frame number 5, we've got a couple that hatch out. And on frame number 7, we got a couple that hatch out. Okay. So they reduce it down maybe to where we've got about 3 of them in there, but when that queen hatches from that cell, the bees that are on the side of the frame that she's on, plus the frame next to it, they all go, yay, we got a queen. Oh, they're so happy, right? But they can't tell that over on 5, they've got a queen that just hatched out within a few minutes of each other. And the same thing on 7, because the pheromone thing. But then all of a sudden we start announcing this whole war cry thing. All right. And all of a sudden the bees over on frame number 3 go, hang on a minute, there's another queen in here. We have to protect our queen. We don't want nothing to happen to her. And we're going to try everything we can to hold her back from being Hulk Hogan's lunch over there on 7. So what they do is they ended up, whatever their normal process is to kick in the swarming process. All right, whether they ring the bell, whether one of them just starts screaming, everybody out, house fire, or the basic pheromone starts spreading through, something triggers that call for a swarm, and then they just start boiling out. All right, well, as that boil out happens, they push their queen out. Well, the girls over on 5 push some of theirs out. The ones over on 3 push some of theirs out. And then all of a sudden, next thing you know, you've got this massive swarm hanging in the tree that's got 2 or 3 unmated queens in it. And it's all in the name of trying to protect a queen. But now you got nothing left.
Y'all listen to this. It's pretty cool.
Listen to
you can hear it. Hope you can hear it well. How about that?
That makes my heart jump out of my chest because I'm thinking I got to get in there and get these queens separated before I lose them inside of a colony. Whose video is that? That's great.
That's mine from back late. Those are some Lappies bee supply queens I had back in the late August, early September. Man, they were talking it up. That's my little mic I'm holding right up there to the hole. They just talked and talked and talked and talked.
That is cool. If you've ever heard that sound walking down your nuke row or in your queen yard and you hear that sound, that is not one that usually makes you feel real warm and fuzzy because you're trying to figure out which box is it and can I get in there before they kill each other and get them split out.
I got a question for you. Do you think, is it possible for queens to pipe before they emerge from the cell?
I believe it is.
I could swear I've heard it
from a cell.
Yes.
Before.
I've heard it from a cell. 100%.
Okay.
I think they can hear it and it goes on. Because I've looked and looked and looked, and I'm trying to find where it's at, and there's nothing on there except for 1 or 2 cells that haven't quite opened yet. And I'm looking, and I'm like, I can hear the cell making that sound, and there's no bees on. I would look and I look and I look and I look and I look. I think that can totally.
Oh yeah,
totally happen.
Yeah, now I'm not into them enough to where, man, when you get into the level of how many jobs that I do as far as removals and everything else, there's so many things that you can do good as a beekeeper, but there's usually only one thing you do really great. That's what I was told, and my avenue in life through bees has taken me into the removal side. Saving bees here and there, trying to educate people, in the general public that have no clue what we do, or our passion in it, and try to explain to them why, you don't want to kill these bees and blah, blah, blah. We have a great time. And, So I limit the amount of bees that I keep in my own yard for that same fact, because there's only so much that I can do at home because I'm doing it out. But
you brought up a good point, though, or an interesting thing just to keep thinking about as we all grow as beekeepers in our businesses. Just because we've learned something a certain way does not mean that is in fact truth in every circumstance. If we were just talking about queens and piping, and Bruce said, he asked the question, do you think they're piping from the cell? I know I've heard it. Bruce has heard it, but in all the education and all the books and things, usually it'll tell you that they're piping. It's Marco Polo. The swords are drawn. They're leading a charge. It's Marco Polo, Marco Polo. And I think that's why it's important to not get so stuck on what we think is truth and fact based on somebody else's experience or observation. And I think this comment from Hometown Honey is a perfect example of that. He says, Mr. Ed has a video of queens piping in a cell from a cutout. I mean, that'll tell you. So if they're doing it there, they're probably doing it before the cell would get cut out in the colony. It's a cool thing to think about,
Do you think that then when they're in the cell and they're piping in the cell, that's like a preliminary, let me see who my competition is, and once I get out of this cell and I'm ready to battle, do you think that is the, how many other, virgins are in here? You think that would be it?
Let me ask you this. Have you ever seen virgin queens fight each other? I mean, usually I've seen them running around in that hive. I've never seen them fighting each other. Do they actually fight each other? Do they destroy the cells of the others before they emerge? But do they actually go and fight each other? Have y'all ever seen that?
I've not seen them tangled. I've seen curled up virgins after they've been getting stung or or being paralyzed, going through that phase of shutting down. But I have never actually seen them tangled up.
All you need to do is ask one of your friends that raise queens that use incubators. Now,
I do.
But
I haven't seen it though.
You've caged your queens though.
I've seen dead. Yeah, that's true. They're usually rollers or something else.
Rollers.
Yeah.
But if you ever, if you ever want to see it, take you just 5 or 6 cells and hang them in the open and let them hatch and then see which one comes out of that.
But I wonder in the hive, because I wonder if that's what happens. They emerge and then they swarm. They just take off with some bees. Because I've seen real small swarms that have had multiple queens, virgin queens in there, like tiny. Lots of times those swarms are not very big. You might have a swarm that's like a softball size. They might have 4 or 5 virgin queens in there. So are they just getting out and they're just taking off? Because then what happens, you try and put them in a box and you see little clumps of bees laying around, and the bees will ball the other queens. Like they kind of pick, it seems like they'll pick the queen they like. Yeah. In my experience. And another queen, they'll ball her. So it's kind of crazy how they do that. They'll fight right there in that swarm. So they hang in a swarm and you try and catch them. And I've actually tried to just kind of watch and see what they do. And you'll see like one will go in the box, a queen, and then you'll see like a little cluster hang over here and a cluster over here, and they just don't go in the box because they're trying to separate. So I don't know what they do in nature how they actually figure it all out. I'm not sure what they do. It frustrates the heck out of me because they're usually small. I can't, what do you do with it? And I just usually don't fool with them. I'll just kind of get the queen that goes in the box, and I don't know what to do with them when you got, just a little tiny, like a golf ball size, little tiny swarm on one queen. What do you do with that little tiny amount of bees? I don't know what to do.
Maybe take them home, make a split, put a frame of sealed brood and a frame of honey and throw them in there.
I've also noticed some of those virgins though, they're not as attractive to the other bees as others are. Like one of the little virgins will have a bigger cluster than the others. So I don't know. I don't know. That's my question.
I can tell you why.
Is it because they're older or younger?
Or are they 30 seconds older? Or a minute older?
We were at the second year that I knew JP. We would go over to Mississippi and do this they called it the bud gathering. The original back in the day was the Bee Masters had a online.com forum, and then Facebook kind of came in there and kind of took away from a lot of those open forum things, on the .coms. And that's how I ended up getting in and meeting some of these people. Was they had the original Bee Masters Facebook group. they would have a gathering back early spring, or usually around the end of March, and just do 3 or 4 days of beekeeping stuff. Well, we caught. This is where I learned that when you shake a swarm, you don't, just because you found that first queen doesn't mean that that's the only one that's in there. You better watch for more. But you also, it taught me how to find them. I can catch a queen, and then I sit back and I just watch in that box. If all the bees are basically hanging out on the frames, everybody's in there, they're just pretty kind of stable, then you probably only had the one queen. I can personally tell you whether a queen's been mated or not just by looking at them and different things about it. But if you get to watching that box, if all of a sudden you see those bees running back and forth, one side to the other, up the wall, down the wall,
Yeah.
all right, you know what I'm saying?
Oh yeah, you've seen it.
Then you've got another one in there, and
Yep.
she's most likely not mated. That is a sign, a red flag going off with fireworks that you have an unmated queen in there, because they don't sit still. A mated queen, once she gets into the box, she needs to take a break, guys. She flew in from the last tree she was hanging on a couple miles down the road, and she's like, "Whoo, man, y'all, I appreciate you not feeding me so much, but you could have put me on a little, maybe a treadmill to where I could have been, like a little bit more ready for this."
She was a little busy too on the ride coming back.
Yeah. So, sorry, Mama just come home, and my little dog decided she was going to follow Mama in here and jump right up here next to the desk.
I thought you were chasing stink bugs like we usually do in the live chats. We're pulling stink bugs out of the air. They're buzzing by. I haven't seen any stink bugs the last couple of weeks. Now that we mention that,
they all migrated south for the summer, probably. But anyway,
so it's not chemtrails.
Not yet.
Chemtrails.
Okay.
But if it's going to rain tomorrow, that'll probably be the chemtrails. So you can tell, it's the little signs that you're watching for to understand what's going on inside that box. Is it, did I catch the big fat plump girl? Well, has it been raining for the last 4 or 5 days? You might want to just double check in case, you never know, because weather can hold up, and then you could have a primary swarm that actually has that mated queen, but still will have an extra couple with her. You never know. So always just keep an eye out for the different little signs on your queen situations. But to answer the whole, yes, you can end up, let's say you find 3 queens in that swarm. All right. You cage all 3 of them. We had fun where we took 3 Nucs with brand new frames sitting in them. So there wasn't any draw of drawn comb, because the bees are, you don't need the queen. If you dump 5 pounds of bees in front of a box that's had bees in it before, they're all going to run in there. They're going to start fanning. They're telling everybody, "Hey, yeah, go in here." So that's kind of a, takeaway. But we took 3 caged queens and put 1 in each entrance of each box and dumped out 5 pounds of bees in front of it, and then sit there and watched. A majority of them went to one box. There was still a pretty good bit went to another box, but one box didn't have probably a little bit more than the golf ball. And my theory on it, it's the strength of the pheromone.
Yeah.
Pheromones
are a big deal.
I think it would be a strength of pheromone.
So does it mean that queen that doesn't have the strong pheromone is not a good queen, or does it mean she's just not developed yet?
Maybe I
think it could be either.
I think yeah. If to figure it out, have a little bit of fun with this. If you ever catch a swarm and you've got 2 or 3 queens in there, okay, have some of the, keep it. I keep a 1,000 of them at a time of those BZ cages, little queen cages. But go ahead and catch them, and then take all 3 of them, put them on top of the frames in a box, and then watch the bees.
Yeah,
you will see that they will go to one real strong. You may have some on another, but they will completely ignore a third one. You can almost tell.
I know, that's what I'm saying. I've totally seen that before.
Yeah.
Like something that a lot of folks will see, and the problem is occurring currently in Ohio, which is why we kind of do things a certain way. Brian was up and got to check out the learning yard. And at the learning yard, we set it up for our folks who've bought bees, especially packages, to be able to see packages go all the way through the entire life cycle. And also we wanted folks to be able to see what the bees do in 5-frame equipment, 8-frame equipment, 10-frame equipment, in an Apame, and then also in that horizontal hive that Ricky made for us. You guys might have saw that in the video that Brian just premiered before we got on tonight. What's cool about that is that when you're installing in that situation, what is that, Brian? I'm not taking my shoes off to count. That's the 5, the 8, the apame, the 10, and the horizontal.
Was
and
there
then another.
6?
There's like 6 colonies there. Well, we wanted to install packages in every single one of those, and also install those all on brand new Premier Extra Heavy Wax Foundation, and all being fed ProSuite from the very beginning. We wanted to see, number one, are the bees going to draw out comb on 3-to-1 on ProSuite, and how do all these different configurations compare? And what this has to do with pheromones is, whenever you're installing several packages in the same yard or the same exact stand, if you install them all in the same couple minutes and you leave their entrances wide open, you know what happens?
You're going to get a lot of bees. Yeah, you're going to get a lot of bees going to probably one hive.
Drifting. And it's not necessarily because one queen is better than the other. When you're looking at how these bees are made, caged, put into packages, when you're talking about a very young queen, yeah, she's mated. Hopefully they've pulled her, she's mated, she's mature. But a lot of times you'll see that even a 12-hour difference or 24-hour difference in the age of the queen that goes into a package makes all the difference in the world. And some of those queens that might be a day or 2 or even 12 hours older, those I think are the ones that have the stronger pheromone, and everyone is all going to. So when we install packages like that, we'll put hardware cloth, 1/8-inch hardware cloth, and we'll close off those entrances for 24 hours. And we'll let those bees sit in the box with that queen, and then we'll do a timed release. One, and then go down a couple, and then go down a couple, release them out at different parts of the day. And you know what we find? We don't have swarm. We don't have any, we have no longer do we have the drifting issue. Where that's interesting is I think it gives those queens just a little bit longer to have just a strong enough pheromone to hold the bees to the box, and then they're in that box circulating all that. It makes sense. They're warm and fuzzy. Otherwise, you can install packages and you end up doing nothing but equalizing those boxes out for the first few weeks, especially because you're waiting until you've got cat brood. Really, that's something interesting to think, that pheromones really are a huge part of that, isn't it?
It would be the one thing that I would probably throw at Jamie Ellis would be, I know he's talked about doing gas chromatic fur-ish testing, something, and blah blah blah.
Yeah.
And I would love to I would love somebody that is in the science world actually do a test on day 1, hatch day, how much, what's the level we got, day 2 the level, and then see how far that'll go. I mean, they could only get so many days of that level, but I'm really wondering, does the pheromone actually really explode after mating?
This is an interesting question about that Jason Crook over at Bohemia Bees put up there, and it's a question that I'm neither agree with or disagree with, but he says, remember, pheromone isn't scent, it's passed through touch, bee to bee. The older virgin has more time to pass along her pheromones bee to bee. Now, I get that, but if that were, I'm just to be a little contrary here, if that were to be the case, then why, when you make splits, when you're shaking a swarm onto a blanket, putting it onto a box, why do we see the bees fan? To me, it looks like they're circulating the pheromone or the scent of the colony around, passing that out, and then it catches. Now, anything in that flight radius now is, boom, like a magnet, all of a sudden is going right to the box. If it's a touch thing, then are the bees in contact enough to where they, if the scent is passed through touch, then what is it? Some kind of olfactory response that they pick up on the scent off of a bee they're in contact with that comes from the queen? Is that what it is? Is it more like, yeah, mama has a strong perfume, but it has to get on us and we have to spread it to somebody else before the bees pick up on it? Or can the bees smell the perfume off mama from X amount of feet away? That kind of has my noggin jogging there a little bit.
Well, I think it's both. I thought it was both. Because they pass the pheromones around inside the hive. They touch, they groom the queen, they touch the queen, they pass it around. But I do know that there are definite smells that you can smell. And when they fan, they're obviously blowing something into the air from the Nasonov gland, right? So I assumed those were pheromones. I thought that was all. I thought it was both. I didn't know that it was. I thought it was both. I never really thought about it that deeply before.
And that's one level that I had thought, because I've always looked at a beehive when you got your lid on it, and everything. There is a communication process that is happening inside that hive. And there is a major balance. And when you pull that lid off, you are swooping every bit of that communication right off the top of the hive. And when that leaves, there all of a sudden it's like, screaming or whatever, and they just all of a sudden they're going into this holy crap, what just happened, and trying to communicate. You get the picture. But if there's not a pheromone, that is literally the airborne that's floating around through there, then how is it that, in my experience, I can tell you exactly within 5 to 10 minutes, I can tell you if I vacuumed a queen up out of a colony or not. I can tell you, because within that few minutes of doing that, I can turn around and I can look behind me, and my vacuum exhaust, as it's going out, has got bees start flying around it, because that exhaust is going through the air, but it won't do it unless that queen is in there. The second thing is that the bees start going crazy looking for that queen. They start running around like mad hatters going, hey, where'd she go? And as long as she's on that comb and in that spot, the bees tell me, no, she's still in here, and I'm not worried about it. And it never fails me.
Well, I think Jason, if you could put that last one up from him, I think he kind of clarified what he was talking about there a little bit. I mean, he may have been talking more about the queen pheromone. The Nasonov is one that they do. It sounds like he's saying that Nasonov is more one that the workers are blowing out. That's a communication that way. And the queen is more maybe by touch. But I do know they can tell where she's at. If you move the queen to a tree 15 feet away, they're going to find her.
Anyone who cages queens, as soon as you pull. I mean, I'm talking as soon as I'm pulling a queen out, I'm barely. By the time I'm barely marking her and putting her into a cage, that colony is roaring. They're automatically have known she's not there, and they're fanning. I think maybe what Jason's saying is that the queen, yes, she has mama's smell, but the bees are also putting off another. They're expressing a Nasonov gland as a way of communicating with all the bees in there. So it's like, okay, that kind of makes sense. If mama's not at home, if mama's not making bacon and eggs and a pot of coffee on in the morning, and all the kids wake up and they're all hungry, well, they're all going to be squabbling. They're going to be communicating as a result of not smelling mama in the kitchen. Maybe that's what it is. Or when mama's got dinner ready and everyone's yelling, out the back door, dinner's ready, dinner's ready, dinner's ready. Maybe it's a way of processing that information. But I've got a really important question. You guys all can smell currently, right? Even with all the things going on, then everybody can smell. Yeah. Okay, so you guys have smelled banana in the colony when they're upset? Yeah. Have you smelled the next step past banana? And what does that smell like to you?
It's almost like a rank, I don't know. I know what you're talking about. I don't know what it's.
Brian, have you smelled the next level of upset?
No, and I was going to bring that up because we were actually talking about that on Saturday.
That's right, we were, because and that's where Yappy, have you smelled the thing past banana?
Well,
have you ever gotten past banana?
I rarely get to banana because, well, I'm just that
he's
good.
so sweet, sugar daddy. Everyone loves him.
He's just Yappy. That's why he's just Yappy.
Man. Well, because he got that bird.
Listen, in my world, I had to learn back a long time ago on how to treat the bees, because who wants the guy who's coming to cut a hole in my wall to actually bring that little can and make my entire house smell like a wood fire? The country folks don't mind it because it's just part of our life. But when you go to you're sitting there in Tuscaloosa, and you're at one of the boosters' houses, and their house is worth more than I made in 10 years. You don't light up a smoker up there in sister's bedroom that is like pristine, and there's no window for it to go out. You learn how to handle bees. Very,
Yappy, I
very
would do
gently.
it, and when I was done, I would put up an Ohio State sticker right on the hole where I cut it. Pow.
Yeah.
Banana belt versus ranked. I tell you what. Here's what I smell, and I feel like I've got a nose sometimes that will just smell
Burnt
something
banana
out of the
pudding.
blue. To me, the first thing is banana, right? And if you put everything back and everything's okay, great. But sometimes if those bees go from "we're warning you" to banana, the next thing that I smell, and if anyone who's listening, comment if you smell the same thing. To me, it smells like a mixture of Windex and apple cider vinegar. There's this weird vinegary-ish, just really strong, like we are. And usually you smell this at about the time that they're all attached, like to your face or on your eyelids.
Yeah,
That
that's just
time
right.
Brian was when he was out when he was filming us doing that 3-way split with the packages. I didn't, like I said earlier, I didn't have my veil, and I'm moving stuff around, and I'm shaking, and I'm doing this. And when they go, maybe we'll call it the kamikaze smell. There is a smell that when they are dead set on dying to try to kill you, they have a smell, and to me, it is just like it's like apple cider vinegar.
It's like when they sting you, like when they're angrily attacking you to sting you, and also like if
Acidic.
you happen to like
Yeah.
smash one or something accidentally or whatever, that's the smell that to me you smell is what they release.
Yeah.
It's a very similar smell, which you hope not to smell that, but that does happen.
And
I agree. It is different than just the angry bananas. There's definitely a distinction there.
well, it smells like terror. Yeah, Tim. Yeah. I don't know how to put a comparison to it. But yeah, I know what you're talking about. And I was about to say that, if you ever get popped by one and you actually squash it on your arm or something, I wonder if it's actually what you're smelling is their stinger juice.
Oh, see, because a lot of times I don't even know I'm stung, and I'll feel them crawling on my face, like something's trying to get out, or I'll feel them on somewhere, the movement, like on a hair, rather than the sting itself, and it's really strong. So I don't wonder, maybe that's what it is. Could be the venom, the bee venom smell, and would make sense why Grammy's midwife I think that she had a great word for acidic. Maybe that's what we're smelling, just smelling the bee venom.
Yeah. Well,
you know who we should ask? Is he on here? Justin Todd Wheeler. What's his YouTube channel? Castle Grounds Apiary. Because remember, he had that video where he took that electronic bee sting plate thing and put it in his colonies. So they would just start lighting that up with venom. Then he would scrape that off, and he had to be careful not to get in his eyes. I'm thinking it must be acidic. We're solving the world's greatest mysteries, one live chat at a time.
That's it. Somebody get him on the phone.
He's in here.
Can't smell worse than rotten water oh yeah, that's nasty. Especially if it's 1-to-1 that's gone bad and it's been in there a little too long. But Yappy, I'm looking forward to an entire feature-length live chat where we go down some pretty controversial rabbit holes. Not in an attempt to be controversial, but I love being able to have. I'm not even saying I'm intelligent, but I like to be able. I'm okay with going against something that I think or that I believe, and running some ideas around and around and around.
Yeah.
And I think it's cool to take some of these ideas and things that we see that might be different than books, but also, and this is a way that I think is important. I think we could all probably do better. We can take an idea that's not ours, that we don't even agree with, and then take a second to just entertain it, let it bounce around a little bit, create some thoughts, and then conversate on that. I think that's a huge deal. I'd like to get on and talk with some treatment-free folks too. Not because I agree with it or that I disagree with it. I feel like I know what works for me. They feel like that they know what works for them. I'm more interested in, I think, the mental approach with folks, the mindset of a beekeeper on why they tick and why they do all these certain things, even though then we might have completely different results if we tried it with the same bees. These are the kind of conversations that I think are fun. That's important for us to entertain because, as you guys know, as soon as you get too comfortable with your beekeeping, you get too comfortable with the methods and ideas that you think are working. Typically, I shouldn't say typically, I'll say for me, that's when some of the greatest humbling occurs. And then you're forced to kind of really look back and check yourself before you wreck yourself again. If I could quote the prophet Ice Cube, it's just one of those things, you know.
Hey, Greg, could I kind of revisit the initial question that kind of started this whole thing?
Well, of course, Bruce, and thank you for your super chat earlier. You and Bohemia Bees, Jason, thank you for that super chat too. We appreciate that.
But I'm not sure. We just kind of, it's been incredible. And I mean, we were going to try not to spend as long tonight, but we've already surpassed what we thought we were going to do. So here we are. But Yappy,
Thanks,
you mentioned that.
Way to go, Yappy.
You mentioned that some bees, the question was brought up. You basically posed it to the group here. Are some bees more swarmy than others? Is that kind of how it was said? Are some bees not swarmy, some bees swarmy? I do believe that there are some genetics, some tendencies of certain breeds that may not be. Just I see in my own colonies, you know, bees of similar age, similar queen age, that from different genetics, some of them are very more likely to swarm. Like some of you'll see they'll build like tons of swarm cells and swarm and swarm and swarm. And others, maybe they swarm once and then they're fine. They do it like the books say they're going to. And others may not swarm younger queens or whatever. So I do think that there is some, you know, like they say Russians are, like we mentioned, Russians are not Russians, but Africanized tend to swarm. Like they'll follow the flow. Like they'll swarm a lot. Like smaller swarms, they just go in and they never get to be as big. They want to swarm more. So I do think there is some genetic difference in it, but I don't know that you can completely breed the swarming tendency out of bees. That's how they naturally multiply in nature. And so that's kind of, I didn't know what you thought about that. I do believe there are different varieties of bees that may swarm more than others. Is kind of what I've seen, and you know, on my bees, at least, you know, what I think. And I know that Gus talked about that a little bit, how he tries to greatly reduce the amount of swarming by trying to, you know, basically get rid of the queens and swarms. And so he said over the years he's had less swarming by doing that. And so I just think there's kind of some different philosophy on that. But I do know that swarming is a natural tendency that bees will do it, especially, you know, if there's sometimes we just can't stop them from swarming. People say, I don't want my bees to swarm, I want to stop them. Sometimes we just can't because that is how they reproduce. But I do think that some are more swarmy, quote unquote, than others. It's just what I think.
To entirely breed out swarming,
you can't do that.
I think that's just
there
impossible.
Would be too many cons.
You're
go against the natural inclination.
Yeah.
Do you guys think it's possible? You know, we're talking about we weren't talking about. On my mind has been, you know, looking up and trying to better understand some of these viruses that affect bees, and we think we're understanding, you know, some of these different things. Sinai, acute paralysis, some of the deformed wing virus, things like that. As you guys were talking, I just had another squirrel dog thought, side thought tagged on to Bruce's. Bruce asked, you know, do you feel like the swarming thing it could be a genetic trait? And I think sometimes maybe they could flat out could have possibly abscond. I had someone send us a message while we were talking here. He's also from Ohio, Dave Nesley, and he just said that they have in fact found have found Africanized colonies in Ohio, and they've put bulletins out, probably like any other state, to, you know, kind of notify and do all that. So Yappy, you nailed that one. He figured that one out right away. That could be what we're seeing, but I wanted to add just a little thing to think about. We don't have to answer it because, like Bruce said, we're already kind of in overtime on what we wanted to do tonight. These things just go and go. Is it possible that bees could potentially have a certain neurological virus to where they're not necessarily communicating 100%, that they're not communicating with each other or processing the information in the hive that could cause a disruption, that could cause them to go into a premature swarm or to put on cells or to think something is wrong and we need to get out of here, or prematurely want to supersede the queen. Do you think that that is a possibility?
I could send you down a deeper rabbit hole than you'd ever think of, but I wouldn't just put it as at virus level. What in our daily lives can be affecting something like that? Here's one for y'all to just take a note and think about for a while. I very commonly find bees move into a void space where there's an electric wire running through it. All right. And I think you'd have to get with Fred Dunn on this one. I caught something where he may have mentioned something about frequencies and electrical wires and how that correlated to bees being interested in it or something there. Get with Frederick Dunn on that one. But it's interesting because there's a draw. There's something about electrical that is drawing bees to come to it. Well, I'm really going to conspiracy theory you here. I can't tell you from 100 years ago what the actual average cancer rate was, but now here we are in 2022, and man, we got cancers that are born every day that they don't even have names for.
Mm-hmm.
What has changed in 100 years? I'll make it real simple. I'll make it real simple on you. A lot has, but bingo, Brian. We electronics. We went from
frequency exposure.
Yes, I mean it started out back years ago where we were communicating through military was communicating on AM radio, CB radio, a lot of low band stuff, and then we got into the fire department, police department radios that were in the 154 range. Now our cell phones are in the 5 gigahertz range. And we've got more satellites than we can stick, that we can count, that we even know that's up there. And we're just being bombarded. I mean, every day you walk down the street and look at the GPS on your car's dash or in your phone. It's got to have 12 satellites, connected to it. Well, if it can connect to 12 satellites, what are we getting blasted with? So if what's the correlation with bees or other things in nature that's just being screwed up because of radio frequencies?
Would you say those things can definitely cause some uncomfortable, nervous, and even anxiety in humans because of that? Is it possible that the bees, even through a viral load, it could be a neurological thing going on that would cause it could be an extra stressor on the colony to where they don't know what the problem is. They just know it's not right, and they're trying to figure it out. Outside of all of the outside things that we just talked about, like I don't know that we fully understand the full health ramifications of viral loads with bees on how they process information, how they communicate with each other, and how they go about doing their day-to-day work. You put all those three things together, it's kind of like whether it's Chicken Little, whether the sky is or is not falling. If the sky is literally falling, whether you think it is or not, you're going to, as a human, are going to react in a certain way. I can only imagine that as intelligent as we think some of these animals are that are on this earth, I can't help but just think a little bit like, okay, well, maybe these things are affecting the bees, whether or not cell phones and 5G and Wi-Fi's and Bluetooth and, all these things have much to do with it. The big thing is anything that's affecting either us, whether the frequencies affecting us neurologically or if viruses can affect bees neurologically, like that's kind of a big deal if you just think about it. Like that's kind of a really big deal.
Radio frequencies are nothing but electronic waves flying through the air, basically. Okay. Well, what if we condense that down and we take a burrito and we put it in a box and we push 3 minutes and we hit start? How does a microwave work?
Yeah.
All right, it's electronic that's flowing back and forth through the little box that's agitating the neutrons, protons, electrons, and all the trons of that item, and it agitates them, creating heat. Okay, we have turned ourselves into a giant round microwave. It's just a matter of we continuously add and add and add. So if if that's the case, now I'm sorry that we're going down this whole crazy thought process road, but here's the bringing it up to that. I would invite anybody that's still in here and throw this one out, maybe Greg in your Facebook group, but I would like to know the success rate of those who have kept bees on power line right-of-ways, because I've got one that's literally 400 feet from my house. Power line, a high line, power line,
A high voltage.
High voltage. It's not the
regulars.
It's not the 150 foot tall. They're only like 60 feet tall. All right, but it's the higher voltage lines. And I'd go out there and I keep it cut, and there is no spraying. There's no agriculture anywhere within my area. The only thing that was there, and what was the most perfect place to put bees, was underneath this power line right away. And at one time, I had over 25 colonies sitting underneath that thing, and they never thrived. And these were colonies that ended up coming from a very, very thriving area, similar to what we got here. Like I said, forage wise, I've got plenty of forage here. Those colonies there never thrived, but 400 feet back on the other side of this wall that's behind me are sitting 15 beehives that are packed full right now, because 37 acres across the street for year after year keeps me going. So 400 yards, 400 feet closer sitting in there, but it's the electrical interference that I don't know, but these are things that I want to dig deeper into to understand. What are they doing? But anyway, thank you.
Have you tried having hives in both places at the same time?
Yeah, but I wasn't in the mindset to tell. I can tell you that the ones that are sitting behind this wall, 400 feet from those power lines, acted just as normal as all could be. Continuously produced honey. Went through the average, swarmer. When they would outdo me if I didn't keep up with them. But the ones that were out there hardly ever got more than one super sitting on them. Never did I actually have enough progress to where I could throw a second deep on them. They just never really did that great.
Whether that's the case or not, I think what's fun is not only fun but important is that we could take, whether we see the same thing or not in our yard, I can listen to what Yappy's saying and learn from that experience and see, okay, what is Yappy seeing? What am I seeing? Is it the same thing here? Is it what's different? To get a little better understanding about somebody else, how they think. That context is kind of a big deal. I'm joking, but I'm not joking. Do you guys remember there used to be a show on AM? It used to be called Coast to Coast AM. Everything
I think it's still on.
Is it still on? We need a Coast to Coast with Yappy Beeman on the next episode. Just and I mean it seriously. Just every idea that is just out there. Like let's just bounce it around. Like just bounce it around. We're not saying you have to believe it or we believe it. Like George Norrie, if you've ever heard him talk with any of those guys who would call into there, he didn't believe a word they said, but they talked about it. They ran, I think it's a fun exercise, because if we can take something that we don't believe to be a fact and just entertain the thought, I think that puts us in a way better place as we move forward and grow as beekeepers, to where when we are confronted with our own personal bias in the bee yard, it gives us a little bit better framework to just more independently kind of review that information and make better choices. But I could kind of go on a hillbilly philosophical rabbit hole on that one. I think we need to get together again, guys, and talk about how we make splits and how we rear queens and how kind of all this kind of plays into the picture. Right now, everyone's kind of swarm-minded. And Brian, I'm not going to tell you how to live your life. It's not for me to do. But you might think about this personal hygiene of yours where it's treatment-free. I'm not sure that it's working. I see you have a visitor on your shoulder.
Veronica is back.
She's back, and she's better than ever.
You know what that means? Every time I get on here with you guys, Veronica shows up. That is Brian's key to let you guys know it's time to dump Yappy. I done figured it out.
Is that what it is? That's the key.
Oh yeah, No, yeah, that's got to be the cute. But anyway,
See?
Well, I want to thank everybody who spent almost 2 hours on here.
have we really?
Almost 2 hours. It's been a lot of fun. I could probably go for 2 more, but I know we're all busy. There's a lot going on at this time of the bee yard. For you guys to take some time out, Yappy, Brian, and Bruce, to sit here and talk about bees, I appreciate you guys. Everyone who's listening and commenting, I appreciate you guys taking the time away from a busy night to kind of hang out with us bee nerds, just talking bee stuff, just throwing around some ideas. We're all comfortable enough with who we are as people. We can take an idea that we don't necessarily believe in, or that we do, and just take it somewhere. That's a lost and dying art, and I really enjoy that aspect. So I appreciate you guys you doing that. Thank you to everyone for all the super chats, for all those. I guess there's a super sticker now. I don't know that I'm not sure I know what that. I got a notice on YouTube that my channel is. What do you call that thing?
The super thanks.
What do you call it? Like with the perks?
Members.
That's it. Members. I guess we're going to have members only jackets now, and we'll have to put the farm logo on the back. Maybe that's what the super sticker is.
No, you can do super stickers or super chats. You can just choose.
See, I have no idea. Yappy, if it looks
super
like I have no idea what I'm doing.
Yeah, super chat. I think you put comment with it, and a super sticker. Just I guess you can choose from different stickers. Like I think his said #1 fan or something. Is that right, Brian? You can choose different. I think I've never done a super sticker, but I think that's what they are.
Yeah.
You guys have any last plugs or anything else you want to get out there before we?
I need to ask. So if there's going to be members, will you have like those members only jackets?
Oh gosh. If we could find them, if they still have that little snappy thing right there. I wasn't sure if that was for you, so I could put my suspenders through it.
Yes.
So I keep my pants up and be in style.
Just think, you're setting up in the learning yard, getting ready, in like another week and a half there. And Dan and I come walking around and we have those members only jackets with our shades on.
Dude, that'd be what probably aviators, I guess, would have to be. Dan's too cool. Dan wears those like blue shiny gas station Ray-Ban ones, like the California. Is Jose on? That's it. But they're like reflective. They're blue. There's Jason Crook. Thanks, buddy. He just donated again. I appreciate that. I should say thanks to Anil over at NKY Honeybees. He gave me some cool hats when he came up here. So I want to say I always appreciate that. Tattoos on the forehead, members only. That's a good one.
Hey,
I actually seen a 90s little 90s one of these videos where this guy was doing all this stuff from the 90s. Do you remember like when you were in like 5th grade and there was a certain, I'm not going to say what it was, but there's a certain club you could have your friends get in, you have a pen and you'd write it on their forehead. That's the kind of tattoos. They're just yeah. Anyways,
while we have Jose here, I do want to say next week I'm looking forward to getting now I know it's only a couple, but I'm looking forward to getting those queens, buddy. So
that's gonna be
cool.
I've
been happy with mine so far. They've done, just 3 weeks in, almost 4 weeks now, but so far they're looking pretty good.
Yeah, I can't wait. So, and I thought that, I had messaged Jose just saying, hey, with the new gig, I didn't know whether I was going to be on the road or anything like that. He says he's got a treat for me. Ooh. I didn't know whether I was going to be on the road or anything, but I'm not. And I looked on my phone a little while ago, and Monday it's going to be 74 and sunny. Tuesday it's going to be like 79 and sunny. So I got good beekeeping coming up.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
All right, guys. We could just keep blabbing on, and I know we probably will once we get off here. But any last things you guys want to plug or promote before we jump off here?
Nature's Image Farm.
Yappy's got I'm going to have a video coming up that's going to be the oddest one as far as storyline goes. I ended up doing a removal out of an apartment back a few days ago. Had a couple of great guys that were there helping that added so much character into it, and we may have You see a lot of these reaction videos on YouTube now. Well, this is going to be kind of a live bee removal reaction kind of thing. It's going to have the guys were personality was great. So
there's no creepy dolls, is there?
Not in this one. That's only during Yellow Jacket season.
Okay.
But no, these guys were hilarious. So hope y'all, I'll get that one out and you check it out. But I appreciate y'all having me on here and just kind of let me throw some slop around. We'll talk about the comment about your chemtrails after we get
on
off
the next show. Hey, the next show, Greg and Yappy, coast to coast, bees
in the box,
and chupacabras. Don't miss it.
Have to do it at 2 a.m. though.
Coast
to coast.
Bruce is in the know. Bruce is in the know. Bruce, do you have any things you want to plug? Any of the upcoming videos?
Well, I've got one I'm working on now. It actually, believe it or not, it was a swarm I caught, which is kind of was a sloppy catch, but I got it. And then I actually, at the end of the video, I show kind of how they've done about 3 weeks in, and it's pretty amazing. Some swarms just don't do a lot, but this thing has just blown up, and so it'll be kind of fun to watch, hopefully, for everybody. And it should be coming out within the next couple of days. I was going to work on it a little bit when we're done here, maybe. But I had someone help him film it, and she filmed it in vertical format. So I'm trying to figure out how to kind of share the screen and do some things, but we'll see how it works out.
Cool.
But anyway, so yeah, we're going to probably, we've got this privet flow that's coming in now. The bees have just blown up. I'll every year my wife tells me, she's like, I'm like, I just don't know. Last year was an exception. Last year it was perfect all year, but most of the time I'm like, dang, I just don't know if I'm gonna get any honey. And she's like, you say that every year. And then all of a sudden, boom, the hives are filling up with honey. And so we're going to have some honey, and I'll probably be harvesting near the end of this month is my goal. But
nice.
I've every single box of comb that I have, that drawn out comb, is on a hive right now. And I have a lot of those. And then I got quite a few boxes with the foundation in them. I'm trying Gus's method on some by putting the frame in the middle, or 1 or 2 frames in the middle. I got somewhere I've got just boxes of complete foundation. So I'm trying different things. But man, I'm basically out of equipment. I've got plenty of Premier foundation. I ordered a pallet of those. I've got 1,200 of those, but everything else I'm running low on because I've just been stacking things up. And I go in and I was in on Monday and I'm like, dang, I wish I just want to split. I can split, but I really can't split. I don't need to split. I've got plenty of darn bees. I love it. It becomes my buddy Davis. He's, and Tyler down there too, the commercial guys. They just are addicted to splitting, and it is amazing to see what bees can do. It is just a miracle every time. You put a cell in there, or a mated queen, or even the walkaways or the flyback splits. I'm trying one of those like Gus showed. It's just a miracle every single time. Every single time you put a queen cell, you do grafting. Every single time you pull those queen cells out and stick them in a mating nuke, or you sell those cells, or you sell a package and see what they can do. Yappy, every time you pull a hive out of a house it's just a miracle, man. It's just a miracle to me every single time. And I'm addicted to it. I'm addicted.
It doesn't get old. It doesn't get old, does it?
Now, just the work part of it, when I'm just going through tons of hives and I get tired and it just wears me down, that gets a little bit, I'm like, I get tired of that. But just the miracle of bees is just the beekeeping thing. I love it. I absolutely do. And I can't stop. It's just crazy. I guess that's an okay addiction to have, right? It's better than a lot of things I can be addicted to.
Right.
That's true.
Well, I've always likened it.
Go ahead, Yappy.
I was just playing off that. I had saltwater aquariums for years, and this is the closest thing that I can have to it's like having an aquarium without water when you're dealing with bees.
All the money wasted on coral and filtration and all that. Oh,
Greg, I got a saltwater tank here.
Oh God.
I told my wife I want to buy one of those 75-inch LCD flat screen super TVs to put on a wall to cycle about 4 hours worth of nothing but fish swimming around, and put it on the wall. And she said, what? I said, it's going to be my aquarium without water. I've got to have it. That's going to be my background. And when I get my studio finished, is this giant TV behind me of nothing but fish floating around.
That used to be the big play in the 90s at really nice restaurants when there was aquariums in the walls. That was like the play then. We should bring that back, Yappy. Aquariums in the YouTube studios.
It's mesmerizing. It's mesmerizing for sure.
You know who has an aquarium?
Matt.
Fred Dunn. If you look at that interview with Fred Dunn, the shrew tails,
Oh yeah,
right behind him, it's an aquarium. So you very smart people like Yappy and Fred still have the aquariums.
Mm-hmm.
I will say too, Greg, that next week I've got a couple of ideas for the chat next week, and so we'll same time, same place, same time, except on my channel, and we'll be
over on Bruce's channel next week, same time.
Not sure exactly. I haven't talked to the person I'm thinking of yet, but I got a couple of ideas of things we might try to do next week, and it should be entertaining as well.
Brian, what's new up with the Castle Hives YouTube channel this coming week?
I got another video that has this character getting stung on his face. And then I have another video from maybe that same character who decided to put bees in this stupid hive.
Oh no.
And he in fact he wrote right on that. So but he won't have to worry about anybody seeing it because I think I'm the only one that ever watches any of the videos.
I hope my wife doesn't see that one. That's the big one.
That'll be I want to try and throw in like a little bit of humor, like some comedy into that.
It should be pretty easy when it's me on the subject. That should be pretty easy.
Funny. Yeah. But
wow.
You know, I went over Monday and I just wanted to check that one colony just to see how those cells were. And it's probably the first time in a little while that I did not even grab one of these.
Oh, wow.
And I just went over. I knew what I had to do. I did the split. I checked a couple things. And so I didn't film any of it. I just wanted to go over and just kind of have peace in the apiary.
Yep.
But, you know, I'll have the queens coming from Jose, and I definitely want to film that whole entire, you know, setting up those splits and then installing those queens and things like that. So, but yeah, it's going to get fun because my 3 colonies that I had coming out of the winter, next week I'll have 10 now already. So from 3 to 10 in a matter of what, 3 or 4 weeks.
After you just said I'm going to take it easy this year.
Well, and then that's going to be
bees had other plans for you.
Yeah, that'll be it. So 3 to 10 works. So, but everybody will see it. So everybody will see it.
Well, cool.
So that's it.
Well, I appreciate everyone again tuning in, spending some time with us. We could go all night, but out of respects to your families, and you've got more important things to do than listen to us blab on tonight. If you want to check out more, check out Bruce. He's working on a video. Brian's going to have some knucklehead guy on a couple more videos. And Brian, I appreciate you coming out to take video of us doing stuff.
It's no problem.
It's been impossible right now to get anything out. So I appreciate at least getting something out. I do have a video coming out tomorrow night. I think we're going to do a premiere where it's Dan and Greg teach 3rd and 4th graders bees. We get the observation hive loaded up and go to school. We had a blast doing that. So keep an eye out for that. Next week, 8 o'clock Eastern on the Brucesbees channel. The Stream Team Beekeeping Chat live with a mystery guest to be announced. And then keep an eye out on the Nature's Image Farm YouTube channel for Coast to Coast FM with Yappy Beeman. Thanks again, guys, for watching. Remember, be the lighthouse and be the change you want to see in this world. We'll see you next time, guys.
Take care, everybody.